Hello, and welcome to week 3, day 2 of Search, Expose, Heal. We are today going to have our professional reflections um, based on yesterday's keynote speaker, James Williams. He spoke about healing from the unknown. When we talk about the unknown, what we are referring to is the idea that we go into a therapist's office believing we are going to get help for our depression. But what happens typically is we end up having to explore a bit of trauma here. Sometimes we have to dabble in some suppressed memories. We have to acknowledge some things in our character that we need to work on. We have to accept responsibility for things that aren't going our way. So yesterday we spoke a lot about the importance of doing the work, and I'm excited to once again hear from Janae Tidwell and all of the information that she's going to provide us in regard to healing from the unknown of life, of emotions, of mental health and wellness. So without further ado, Miss Janae Tidwell.
Hello, my name is Jenny Tidwell, and I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the Houston area. I want to thank Devin for the opportunity to be a part of this pause conference and give reflections upon the testimonies that are given each week. I also want to thank the gentleman who gave his testimony in regards to healing from the unknown. Just a few thoughts and reflections to enter into treatment and then determine that what you came in for is actually not maybe at the heart of the issues that you are suffering. It's not what you thought, but it's something else that's maybe causing the symptoms that you're hoping to alleviate through treatment. That's a very common thing. Oftentimes people will come in and have an idea, and don't get me wrong, you know what anxiety is, you know what depression is, you are the best advocate for your own mental health, you know you the best. However, there are some things and some layers to what it is that you may be experiencing that you may not have full awareness of. Like, I can know that I don't feel well and my body aches and I have a temperature, but I don't know maybe if that is the flu or if that is a more serious illness. I need the professional to help me put those symptoms together and truly look at them and determine what truly is the root cause of those symptoms. And treatment can do that. Treatment can give you the opportunity to take all of these signs and symptoms and put them together, but really look at them at a deeper level and not just say, hey, I don't feel well, or hey, I think I'm depressed. Well, let's look a little bit deeper into those symptoms that you are saying are your depression and really determine what's at the root cause of it. I've had plenty of clients come in and tell me they want to work on their career or they want to work on this part of their character, the aspect, their behaviors, right? And then we start to work and we determine that there is some issues of their past. And I will say one major thing, one major common theme when it comes to healing from the unknown is the issue lies in childhood. Many of us think that what we are experiencing today is because of an issue today, right? It's because of something I'm going through right now in the moment. And that thing right now in the moment can be the trigger to take you back to what maybe has taken place in your childhood with your family of origin. That's the family you grew up in, right? If that's mom, dad, both, siblings, extended family with grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, whomever was in that core home of yours. There's a lot of things that are created in that family of origin time that end up affecting us as we become adults. So don't be afraid to look at your family of origin and really dive deep there. Another place that we can find some hidden issues that we did not really expect would be from trauma of the past. And that may not have been in childhood, but it could have been in adulthood. But we went through a traumatic experience and we thought we had done the work to get over it. We had maybe processed it with a therapist or counselor or even a clergy member. And we felt like we kind of got through it. It wasn't bothering us as much as it used to. And then all of a sudden something happens in our present and it takes us back. And we are then combining these things and saying, oh goodness, I thought I had gotten over that, but maybe I hadn't. Or now it's affecting me in a different way than it was back then. And that absolutely can be the case. And it is okay, right? We do have experiences later on in life that will take us back to things that we thought we had processed and taken care of. And you probably did do what you needed to do in that moment, but now life has brought something different. And so now there's a need to reprocess some of those things again, right? So family of origin issues, trauma from your past, and then things that we just did not have the time, space, capacity, or emotional energy to deal with in that moment, right? So we stuffed them. We stuffed them down. We said, hey, I'm not dealing with that. I'm putting it on the shelf. I'm just going to push through. I'm going to get through it. I'm not going to worry about that right now. And those things are going to come back around if we did not do the work to deal and heal from them in our past. So be mindful of those three areas and really take a look at those when it comes to diving deeper into your therapeutic work. We can alleviate symptoms all day, but just know that if we're not dealing with the root cause of what's the symptoms came from, of where the symptoms came from, then they're going to come back around. At some point of time in life, something's going to trigger, it's going to pull those symptoms back out, and you're going to be faced with either dealing with the symptoms yet again or dealing a little bit deeper into the true issue, the unknown for you, right, that now you've got to face and actually deal with and really reflect upon. So I hope those 3 points kind of gave you some clarity of places to begin to look if it is that you are truly trying to dig a bit deeper in your treatment. And again, find a therapist that you trust. Find a therapist that's going to work with you to do this deeper level work. This is stuff that's going to take some time. The gentleman mentioned he had been in treatment for 1.5 years. That's not a crazy long amount of time to be in treatment if you think about it. Right? And we go for an hour, maybe a week or every other week. And so if I go for an entire year every week, that's just 52 hours, right? That's just 2 full days of treatment in a year's time. It's not a lot of time. Though the majority of your work is done outside of that room, a lot of the guidance of where to go in your work is done inside of that room. And so if it's only been 52 hours out of 365 days, that's not a lot of time to be in treatment. So just keep that into perspective as you start diving deep and truly doing the work to heal from the unknown. I appreciate you. Definitely reach out if you need. Again, my name is Janae Tidwell. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and you can definitely connect with Devin if it is that you are needing some more guidance in regards to mental health. And I know that she would be happy to connect you with myself if I could be of service. Definitely take care. Have a good one.
Thank you for those reflections, Janae. As always, you provide some insight into what we need to be looking for professionally, what we need to be doing as we seek professionals, as we're going to these therapy sessions, and how to take ownership of the work that needs to be done in order for us to be better, to start this process of healing, to move forward in our journey on this path. And one of the things that she touched on was being your own advocate. And I talked about this last year during Mental Health Awareness Month. And I have to say that we say this in so many different words: finding your voice, understanding where you're coming from, asserting yourself in that situation. And the reality is your therapist can only do as much as you allow them to do. Your therapist can only help you with what you are willing to be helped with. And if you know that what you're touching on is surface level with your therapist, and you're having these surface conversations about how's life treating you, how you feel about things, but you're not digging deeper, chances are you're not getting where you need to go um, in order to heal fully. So when she talks about, where these things could come from, like when we're talking about healing from the unknown, those things that we don't necessarily know are wrong with us and where those may lie. One of them she talked about was childhood. How were you raised? What was your home life like? What did you see growing up? Who was your mentor or your guardian? How were you taught to live? What example was set for you? That's important because, I think I used this example last week or the week before. If the people you love don't manage money well and they don't teach you how to manage money well, you don't figure it out for yourself, you don't have the tools necessarily. Yes, you can learn them, but do you know you don't manage money well if no one's ever told you or if you've never experienced that through someone else? You find out as an adult, but as you're growing, you don't necessarily know if you do it well until you have to manage your money. And that goes with your emotions. If everyone in your house is the I'm okay, I'm fine, and no one talks about what it's like to lose someone, if no one's talking about what's going on in the news or the burdens that are placed on the parents and the family, if no one's talking those things through and you don't hear people openly discuss their emotions and how they feel and what it's like to go through certain things, you don't know how to express that yourself. You have to find that voice for yourself. Otherwise, you just mimic what you've seen all your life. Um, Issues from trauma. So we all go through different things, and trauma is kind of subjective to the person that's going through it. What I consider traumatic may not be traumatic for you, but what is traumatic for you may seem petty to me. But when you think about trauma, you have to know that it's not something you easily heal from. If it's traumatic for you, it's not something you got up the next day, wiped your tears, and moved on from. It was a period of time that went by before it got better, before you felt better, before you could move forward in your day to day without thinking about that thing that happened to you at that point in time. We have to acknowledge that it can be triggered by things in the present. Um, the loss of one loved one may trigger the memories and the pain of losing another one. I recently experienced that as I was talking about dealing with my grandmother's loss. I finally hit a point where I remembered losing my grandfather. So it happens. It's okay. This is a normal thing. And this is where we have to start to look in order to heal from the things that we haven't actually said out loud. Um, Sometimes things are so bad that we don't want to deal with them. Sometimes things are so overwhelming that we don't have the space, we don't have the mental capacity, we don't have the time to deal with it. Um, I talk about sometimes how saying I'm not okay is something I don't do well. I attribute it to just like if you were climbing a mountain and you get to that part that's super steep, but you got to get to the top because you made it too far from the bottom to turn around and just go back down. So getting to the top is that resting point, and you just bury your head and you keep forging forward and upward to get to the peak of that mountain. But what happens if you twist your ankle? You got to go up or down. And if you're trying to go one way or the other, you ignore that ankle pain. You ignore what happened, that injury, and you keep moving forward. But did it heal properly? We talk about breaking bones and things like that. But if you broke a bone, you had to reset it for it to heal. Had to have it looked at and reset by a doctor for it to heal properly. Otherwise, it can grow back deformed. It can cause other problems. So that's the same thing mentally. Sometimes our healing is to put a band-aid over it and move forward and pretend it didn't happen. And then something else occurs in our life and it triggers and sends us in a spiral towards a different situation. So we have to acknowledge the trauma in our life. We have to talk about it. Is it something you got to go shout from a rooftop? Do you have to post it on social media? Do you have to go tell your mom about what she did to you when you were 17 that hurt you so badly and now you're in therapy to deal with it? Maybe not. Maybe it's something you acknowledge to yourself in a mirror and say, my mother did X, Y, and Z. Or when I was 16, this happened to me. But we have to acknowledge those things that happen to us. We have to say them out loud so that we can start that process. And acknowledge, this is all going back to what I said about acknowledgement. You can't heal from things that you don't acknowledge exist. And if we're not doing that, we are suppressing them, we're pretending they didn't happen, and we're not healing back the way we should. We aren't healing stronger than before. Can't really say we're healing. We are getting better. We are moving forward. We are pressing on. We are burying our head and still climbing, but we are not healing when we do that. Something else that I want to talk about that I think is important, and I just want to drive home and just give some specifics. So she talked about symptoms, triggers, and root causes. So typically we go to the doctor because we're showing symptoms of something. We go to a therapist because we're showing symptoms or signs of depression, anxiety. We might want to further our career. We might be running into issues of anger and things like that. Well, those symptoms had to be triggered by something. Those symptoms are the result of an event, a situation, a realization, an epiphany, whatever you want to call it. Those triggers happen, those symptoms happen because of a trigger. But what we have to understand is that root cause is what we have to get to the bottom of. Why do we have to get to the bottom of the root cause? If I know what the trigger was, I just avoid that trigger and I moved on. Well, I came to know in my own personal experience that the root cause is, if you don't get to the root cause, everything is going to be a trigger. Everything can be a trigger. Everything will become a trigger, right? So in dealing with my postpartum depression, it was labeled postpartum depression because I had just had a baby. But as I dug deeper in therapy, as I continued to go to therapy, we realized I was depressed before I ever got pregnant. I was dealing with depression long before I ever acknowledged that I was pregnant or knew that I was pregnant. So postpartum was just the label based on the timing in which I was diagnosed, not my actual diagnosis. The other side of that is my suicide attempt was not something that just came out of nowhere. It was building from the time I was 16. There were so many things in my life that I didn't acknowledge. There were so many triggers in my life that I treated symptoms for, but I never got to the cause of. I went to get help with the symptoms, identified triggers, and I avoided a lot of those triggers in order to not have to deal with the causes of those things. And I have to say that ending up in the hospital for 3 days and coming out and being told that I had to start my life over and not so much hit the reset button, but I needed to learn to be alone with me, deal with me, fix me, heal me, love me before I could do that for anyone else, including my own children, was a wake-up call. So if you know you're having symptoms and you can identify your triggers, we need to get to the root cause of why that's a trigger for you. Why am I triggered when this happened? Why does this commercial bring me to tears all the time? Why is it when I'm around this person or this type of person, I feel this uneasy feeling? Getting to the root cause is the only way we heal. It's understanding what happened and why, and moving forward and not avoiding things, but understanding that when this happens, I feel this, and this is how I combat that. These are tools I use to feel better, to do better, and to live a prosperous life, not just one where I survive by avoiding my triggers, to not be triggered to end up in therapy or need to take medication and things like that. So, Janae, again, I want to thank you because I think you gave us a lot to think about. But again, the 3 things that I took from it: being your own advocate, being able to speak up for yourself and say, this is what I need for me in this period of time, and being able to express that to your therapist. When you go to the doctor, you acknowledge what's hurting and you tell them what's hurting, you point it out, They tell you what tests you need and you ask questions. You need to do the same at your therapist's office. You need to be open with your therapist about, I don't think this is working and here's why. I do it all the time. Understanding that as we're trying to get through this process of healing from things that we may not know about, we're going to uncover some things. They're not going to be comfortable. Understanding that it's going to go deeper than just last week, last year, 5 years ago. It can go way back to your childhood, and dealing with a grandparent, a parent, etc. is important. But most of all, I want us to understand the difference between symptoms, triggers, and root causes. Why? Because the root cause is what we want to get to the bottom of. We can treat symptoms, we can identify triggers, but in order to heal, we've got to start with dealing with the root cause. So, with that being said, thank you again for watching and supporting. This is the end of week 3, day 2, our professional reflections. Tomorrow, we will have Pastor AJ Jones of Color Missionary Baptist Church with his spiritual reflections on this topic. So, see you tomorrow and have a great night.